The sun had barely risen over the quiet suburban neighborhood when Marcus Johnson pushed open the heavy glass doors of the office building. It was just another day for the 38-year-old janitor, who had been working at this same location for nearly 5 years. He liked his job. It wasn't glamorous, but it paid the bills, and he took pride in keeping the place spotless. Every morning, Marcus would arrive before anyone else, armed with his mop, broom, and a cheerful smile that often earned him friendly greetings from the early bird employees. This particular Monday started like any other. The air inside the building was cool and still, the kind of silence that only exists before the workday begins. Marcus carried his bucket of cleaning supplies down the long hallway, humming softly to himself as he worked. He stopped at each trash can along the way, emptying them quickly and efficiently. By now he knew every corner of the building, the squeaky floorboard near the water cooler, the stubborn smudge on the third-floor window, and even which rooms needed extra attention after weekend events. As Marcus reached the second floor, he noticed something unusual. 2 men standing near the copy room. At first glance, they didn't look like regular employees. They weren't dressed in business attire or carrying briefcases. Instead, they wore plain clothes, dark jackets and jeans, and seemed out of place in the otherwise empty corridor. One of them held what looked like a notebook, while the other leaned casually against the wall, scanning the area with sharp eyes. Marcus paused for a moment, unsure if he should say hello or keep moving. Before he could decide, the taller of the 2 men approached him. "Excuse me," the man said gruffly, his voice low and commanding. "Can I see some identification?" Confused, Marcus frowned. "Identification? Why?" "I work here." He set his cleaning supplies down and pulled out his ID badge, clipped neatly to his shirt pocket. "See? I'm the janitor." But the man didn't seem satisfied. He glanced at the badge briefly before shaking his head. "We got a report about a suspicious individual matching your description hanging around here late last night. You need to come with us." Marcus felt his stomach drop. Suspicious individual? What was this man talking about? He hadn't done anything wrong. "I don't understand," Marcus said, trying to stay calm. "I've been coming here every morning for years. Ask anyone, I'm always here." The shorter man stepped closer, crossing his arms. "Listen, buddy, we don't have time for explanations. Just cooperate, okay? This'll go a lot smoother. If you do." By now, Marcus's heart was racing. Something about these men felt off. They hadn't introduced themselves properly, and their tone was far too aggressive for a simple misunderstanding. "Are you police officers?" Marcus asked cautiously. "Can I see your badges?" Reluctantly, the taller man flashed a badge, tucked into his jacket pocket, though he kept it angled away so Marcus couldn't get a good look. "Yeah, we're cops. Now stop stalling and come with us." Marcus tried to reason with them again, explaining that he had keys to every room in the building and offering to show them his schedule. But the more he talked, the angrier the officers became. Without warning, the shorter man grabbed Marcus's arm and twisted it behind his back, forcing him to bend over. Pain shot through Marcus's shoulder as cold metal clicked around his wrists. He was being handcuffed. "What are you doing?" Marcus shouted, panic rising in his chest. "I didn't do anything wrong. Call my supervisor. Check the security cameras." But the officers ignored him, dragging him toward the stairs. Marcus stumbled as they shoved him forward, his sneakers sliding awkward against the polished floor. His mind raced. How could this be happening? He'd never caused trouble in his life. All he'd done was show up for work like he did every single day. Downstairs, a small crowd had begun to gather. A few employees arriving for the day watched in stunned silence as Marcus was marched outside in handcuffs. Some recognized him instantly. "That's Marcus," one woman exclaimed, pointing at him. "He works here. What's going on?" "He says he's the janitor." One of the officers barked back, clearly annoyed. "But we've got reason to believe otherwise." Still, not everyone was convinced. A young intern named Sarah pulled out her phone and began recording the scene discreet, finished. The scene outside the office building was chaotic. Marcus stood in handcuffs, his face flushed with a mix of anger and embarrassment, as the 2 officers yanked him toward their squad car. The cool morning air did little to calm his racing heart. His protests echoed loudly. I'm innocent. You've got the wrong person. But they fell on deaf ears. The taller officer, Daniels, barked back at him. Save it for the station, while Grayson, the shorter one, shoved him roughly into the back seat of the vehicle. As the door slammed shut, Marcus felt a wave of helplessness wash over him. He'd never been in trouble with the law before, not even a parking ticket. And yet here he was, sitting in the cramped confines of a police car, accused of something he couldn't even fathom. His mind raced. Who would frame him like this? Why now? Was it because of his race? These questions swirled in his head, but no answers came. Outside, the small crowd that had gathered grew larger as more people arrived for work. Some recognized Marcus immediately and began voicing their disbelief. That's Marcus. He cleans our offices every day, one man shouted. Another woman chimed in. He's always so polite. What are you arresting him for? But the officers ignored them, brushing off their concerns with curt dismissals. This is police business, Daniel snapped, glaring at the group. Mind your own. Unbeknownst to the officers, Sarah, the young intern who had pulled out her phone earlier, continued recording everything from a safe distance. She zoomed in on Marcus's face, capturing the frustration etched across his features as he tried once again to explain himself through the window of the squad car. I'm telling you, I'm the janitor, he yelled, his voice cracking under the strain. Call my supervisor. Look at the security footage. But the officers weren't listening. They climbed into the front seats, slamming their doors shut. As the engine roared to life, Sarah stepped closer, holding her phone steady. Why are you taking him away? She called out, her voice trembling slightly. Daniels glanced at her in the rearview mirror, his expression hard and unyielding. Stay out of this, ma'am, he growled. Unless you want to end up in cuffs, too. Sarah hesitated for a moment, then lowered her phone but didn't stop recording. She watched silently as the squad car pulled away from the curb, its tires squealing against the asphalt. Her hands shook as she realized the gravity of what she'd just witnessed. Something about the whole situation felt deeply wrong. Why hadn't the officers checked Marcus's ID properly? Why had they ignored the protests of people who clearly knew him? Back inside the building, whispers spread like wildfire. Employees huddled together, discussing what they'd seen. One woman approached the reception desk, asking if anyone had contacted Marcus's supervisor yet. Another suggested calling the police department directly to report the incident. Meanwhile, Sarah retreated to a quiet corner, replaying the video she'd taken. It wasn't perfect. The audio was muffled in places and the camera shook when she'd moved, but it captured enough to show how unfairly Marcus had been treated. As the minutes ticked by, an eerie stillness settled over the office. Normally, bustling with activity by this time, the space felt unusually quiet, almost somber. No one could focus on their tasks. All anyone could think about was Marcus and whether he was okay. Then, without warning, the sound of screeching tires shattered the silence. Heads turned toward the parking lot as a sleek black SUV came to a sudden halt near the entrance. 3 figures emerged, dressed sharply in suits that screamed authority. 2 men flanked a woman in the middle, her sharp gaze scanning the area, as though she were searching for something or someone. She carried herself with confidence, her posture straight and purposeful. This was Agent Carter, a seasoned investigator with the FBI, and she meant business. Agent Carter strode into the building, her heels clicking against the floor. Employees parted instinctively to let her pass, curiosity written all over their faces. She stopped near the front desk where a nervous-looking employee stammered, Can I help you?" "I hope so," Agent Carter replied, her tone firm but measured. "We received information that a man matching Marcus Johnson's description was detained here moments ago. Can you tell me what happened?" The employee hesitated, glancing around at the others for support. Finally, someone spoke up, a middle-aged man who had seen the entire ordeal unfold. "They took him," he said, pointing toward the parking lot. 2 cops showed up and arrested him, said he was suspicious or something. "But Marcus works here. He's the janitor." Agent Carter's brow furrowed. "Did they give a reason for the arrest?" "No," another voice chimed in. "They wouldn't listen to anyone. Just threw him in their car and left." Without missing a beat, Agent Carter turned to one of the agents accompanying her. "Get me the plate number of that squad car," she instructed. Then, addressing the crowd, she added, "Thank you for your cooperation. We'll get to the bottom of this." Her words sent a ripple of relief through the room. For the first time since the incident, there was a sense that justice might prevail. But as Agent Carter marched back to her SUV, her expression remained grim. Whoever had tipped off the local police about Marcus had done so deliberately, and she suspected it was tied to the very case she'd been working on for weeks. Inside the squad car, Marcus sat slumped against the seat, staring blankly out the window. He didn't notice the black SUV speeding past them in the opposite direction or the determined look on Agent Carter's face. All he could think about was how quickly his world had unraveled. One moment, he was just a janitor doing his job. The next, he was being treated like a criminal, humiliated in front of his coworkers and dragged away without explanation. Yet, unbeknownst to him, forces far greater than those two officers were already in motion. Forces that would not only clear his name but also expose a web of corruption lurking beneath the surface of the seemingly ordinary office building he cleaned every day. The squad car carrying Marcus sped down the empty streets, its siren silent but its urgency palpable. Inside, Marcus stared out the window, his mind racing with a mix of fear and confusion. He couldn't shake the feeling that something bigger was at play here, something he didn't fully understand yet. The officers in the front seat barely spoke to each other, their focus fixed on the road ahead. Marcus tried one last time to plead his case. "You're making a huge mistake," he said, his voice trembling. "I'm not who you think I am." But the response was predictable. Silence. Daniels, the taller officer, glanced at him briefly, in the rearview mirror before turning his attention back to the road. Grayson, meanwhile, kept his eyes straight ahead, his jaw clenched tightly. It was clear they weren't interested in hearing anything Marcus had to say, unbeknownst to them, or to Marcus. The black SUV driven by Agent Carter was already closing in. With the license plate number relayed to her team, she'd quickly traced the route the squad car was taking and ordered her agents to intercept it before it reached the precinct. As the two vehicles approached an intersection, Carter's SUV screeched to a halt directly in the path of the squad car, forcing it to slam on its brakes. The sudden stop sent Marcus lunging forward against his seatbelt, his heart pounding even harder than before. "What the hell is this?" Daniels barked, stepping out of the car with his hand resting on his holster. Carter stepped out of her SUV, flanked by her two agents. Her presence commanded authority, her sharp suit and composed demeanor a stark contrast to the disheveled appearance of the two officers. She walked up to the squad car, her gaze steady and unyielding. "Officer?" "Daniels, I presume?" she asked, her tone calm but firm. Daniels frowned, clearly irritated. "Who are you, and why are you blocking us?" Carter flashed her badge, holding it up for both officers to see. "Special Agent Carter, FBI, and unless you want to explain yourselves to my superiors, I suggest you step aside." Grayson's face paled slightly, but Daniels tried to maintain his bravado. "We're transporting a suspect. This doesn't concern you." "Oh, but it does," Carter replied, her voice cutting through the tension like a knife. "That man you've arrested? His name is Marcus Johnson, and he's currently under federal protection as a key witness in an ongoing investigation. Now either you release him immediately, or we'll do it ourselves, and trust me, you don't want that headline." The color drained from both officers' faces. They exchanged uneasy glances, unsure of how to respond. "Federal protection?" Grayson stammered. We didn't know." "Well, now you do," Carter shot back, her patience wearing thin. "Unlock the cuffs and let him out. We'll take it from here." Reluctantly, Daniels opened the back door of the squad car. Marcus blinked in the bright sunlight, squinting as he looked up at the unfamiliar figures surrounding him. For a moment, he thought this might be some kind of trick, another layer of humiliation added to the nightmare he was living. But when Carter extended her hand to help him out, her expression softened. "Mr. Johnson, I'm Special Agent Carter. You're safe now. These men made a serious error, but we're going to fix it." Marcus hesitated, his instincts torn between distrust and relief. Finally, he accepted her hand, and climbed out of the car, his legs shaky beneath him. As soon as he was free, Carter motioned for one of her agents to remove the handcuffs. The cold metal fell away, leaving red marks on his wrists. He rubbed them absently, still trying to process what was happening. "Can someone please tell me what's going on?" Marcus asked, his voice hoarse from shouting earlier. "Why did they arrest me? Who are you people?" Carter nodded sympathetically. "I know this has been overwhelming for you, Mr. Johnson, and I promise I'll explain everything. But first, we need to get you somewhere safe. Those officers acted based on false information that was deliberately planted to mislead them." "Planted?" Marcus repeated, his brow furrowing. "By who?" "That's part of what we're investigating," Carter explained. "But suffice it to say, your presence here today isn't a coincidence. You've unknowingly become involved in something much larger than yourself." As she spoke, Daniels and Grayson hovered nearby, looking increasingly uncomfortable. Carter turned her attention to them, her tone icy. "Gentlemen, consider yourselves suspended pending further investigation. Internal Affairs will be contacting you shortly. In the meantime, I suggest you reflect on your actions today and how easily assumptions can lead to disastrous consequences." The two officers exchanged guilty glances but said nothing. They knew better than to argue with an FBI agent, especially one as formidable as Carter. Without another word, they climbed back into their squad car and drove off, leaving behind a cloud of dust and unanswered questions. Once they were gone, Carter ushered Marcus into the passenger seat of her SUV. One of her agents slid behind the wheel while the other took the back seat. As the vehicle pulled away, Marcus finally allowed himself to exhale. He leaned back against the seat, closing his eyes for a moment. The adrenaline that had kept him going all morning was beginning to wear off, leaving him physically and emotionally drained. "You handled yourself well back there," Carter said gently, breaking the silence. "Not everyone stays calm in situations like this." Marcus opened his eyes and looked at her, his expression a mixture of gratitude and bewilderment. "I didn't have much choice," he admitted. "But honestly, I still don't understand. What's happening? Why would anyone plant false information about me, and why is the FBI involved?" Carter hesitated, weighing how much to reveal. "Let's just say that certain individuals within the company you work for aren't exactly law-abiding citizens. We've been tracking their activities for some time now, and recently, we discovered evidence suggesting they're involved in illegal operations that could implicate high-ranking executives. Unfortunately, someone tipped them off that we were closing in, and they panicked. That's where you come in." Marcus frowned, shaking his head. "Me? What did I do?" "You didn't do anything wrong," Carter assured him. "In fact, quite the opposite. Last month, during your routine cleaning rounds, you stumbled upon something significant. A piece of evidence they thought they'd hidden safely. They must have realized you found it and decided to eliminate any potential risks." Marcus's eyes widened. "Wait, are you talking about that USB drive I found in the potted plant on the 3rd floor? I thought it was just junk, so I left it there." Carter smiled faintly. "That junk, as you called it, contains encrypted files linking those executives to criminal activity. Whoever planted it likely assumed it would go unnoticed, but then you came along. Once they realized you'd seen it, they set this whole thing in motion to discredit you and throw us off track." Marcus sank back into his seat, overwhelmed by the revelation. He had no idea his simple act of tidying up could have such far-reaching implications. "So, what happens now?" he asked quietly. "Now," Carter said, her voice steady and reassuring, "we protect you. You're a crucial part of this investigation, Mr. Johnson. Your testimony and that USB drive could bring down an entire network of corruption. But first, we need to ensure your safety. Trust me when I say these people won't hesitate to try again if they think you're a threat." For the first time since the ordeal began, Marcus felt a flicker of hope. Despite everything he'd endured, he realized he wasn't powerless. In fact, he held the key to exposing the truth. And maybe, just maybe, justice would prevail after all. The SUV carrying Marcus and the FBI agents sped through the streets, its windows tinted to shield them from prying eyes. Inside, the air was tense but focused. Agent Carter sat beside Marcus, her sharp gaze occasionally flicking toward him as she gauged his reaction to the whirlwind of revelations. Marcus, still reeling from everything he'd learned, stared out the window, his mind trying to piece together how his ordinary life had become entangled in something so extraordinary. "So," Carter began, breaking the silence, "I know this is a lot to take in, but I need you to trust me, Mr. Johnson. We're going to make sure you're safe, and we'll do everything we can to bring these people to justice." Marcus nodded slowly, though his expression remained guarded. "It's just hard to believe," he said finally. "One day I'm cleaning offices and the next I'm some kind of key witness in a federal investigation. It doesn't feel real." "I understand," Carter replied, her tone softening. "But let me assure you, it's very real. And while it might seem overwhelming now, your actions could help dismantle a dangerous operation. That USB drive you found? It's evidence of corruption at the highest levels of this company. People who think they're untouchable are about to find out otherwise." Marcus glanced at her, his curiosity piqued. "What exactly is on that drive?" Carter hesitated for a moment, then leaned closer, lowering her voice. "Financial records, emails, confidential documents, all pointing to illegal activities. Money laundering, insider trading, even connections to organized crime. The executives involved have been careful to cover their tracks, but someone slipped up. Whoever hid that drive thought no one would find it, but they underestimated you." Marcus let out a shaky laugh, running a hand over his face. "Me? Underestimated me? I'm just a janitor." "Don't sell yourself short," Carter said firmly. "You may not wear a suit or sit in a boardroom, but you've got integrity, and that's more valuable than any title. These people don't care about right or wrong. They only care about power and profit. You've given us a chance to hold them accountable." As the SUV pulled into an unmarked government facility, a nondescript building tucked away on the outskirts of town, Marcus felt a mix of apprehension and determination. He stepped out of the vehicle, flanked by Carter and her team, and followed them inside. The interior was sterile and functional, with fluorescent lights buzzing overhead and security cameras mounted in every corner. An agent led him to a small conference room where coffee and sandwiches had been laid out on the table. "Eat something," Carter urged. "You've had a long morning and we've got a lot to discuss." Grateful for the gesture, Marcus sat down and picked at the food, his appetite returning bit by bit. As he ate, Carter laid out the plan. "We'll keep you here temporarily, until we secure a safe house for you. In the meantime, we'll review the evidence on the USB drive and prepare for the next steps. Your testimony will be critical when the time comes, so we'll walk you through what to expect." Marcus listened intently, nodding along. Despite the gravity of the situation, he couldn't help but feel a spark of resolve. For years, he'd worked tirelessly in the background, unnoticed and undervalued. Now he was being told that his presence mattered, that his voice could make a difference. It was both terrifying and empowering. Meanwhile, back at the police station, Officers Daniels and Grayson were facing the fallout of their reckless actions. News of the wrongful arrest spread quickly, fueled by Sarah's video, which had gone viral online within hours. Social media erupted with outrage as viewers watched the footage of Marcus being handcuffed and dragged away despite his protests. Hashtags like Taos Justice for Marcus and Taos End Racial Profiling trended across platforms, drawing attention to systemic issues within law enforcement. Local news outlets picked up the story, airing interviews with employees from the office building who vouched for Marcus's character. "He's the nicest guy you'll ever meet," one coworker said during a live segment. "To see him treated like that, it's heartbreaking." Another added, "This isn't the first time Daniels and Grayson have acted this way. They've always been aggressive, especially toward black men." The backlash forced the police department to act swiftly. Both officers were placed on administrative leave pending an internal affairs investigation. Their supervisor issued a public apology, promising transparency and accountability. But for many, the damage was already done. Protesters gathered outside the precinct, holding signs and chanting slogans demanding justice for Marcus and reforms within the department. Amid the chaos, Internal affairs detectives reviewed the incident meticulously. They interviewed witnesses, analyzed the security footage from the office building, and examined the anonymous tip that had prompted the arrest. What they discovered was damning. The tip had been fabricated, its vague description deliberately, designed to target Marcus based solely on his race. Someone had wanted him out of the picture, and fast. Back at the government facility, Marcus spent the afternoon working closely with the FBI team. Agents helped him recount every detail of the past few weeks, from the moment he'd discovered the USB drive to the events leading up to his arrest. They assured him that his cooperation would not only protect him, but also strengthen their case against the corrupt executives. "You're doing great," Carter told him as they wrapped up for the day. "This won't be easy, but you're tougher than you realize. Remember, we're with you every step of the way." By evening, Marcus was shown to a secure room where he could rest. Though exhausted, sleep eluded him. His thoughts kept drifting back to the injustice he'd faced, not just today, but throughout his life. Growing up in a predominantly white neighborhood, he'd often felt like an outsider, judged before he even opened his mouth. Even as an adult, he'd encountered countless microaggressions and assumptions about who he was and what he was capable of. But tonight, something felt different. Tonight, he wasn't alone. For the first time, he had allies, people who believed in him and were willing to fight alongside him. As he lay on the narrow cot staring at the ceiling, Marcus made a silent vow. He wouldn't let fear silence him. If sharing his story could inspire others to stand up against injustice, then he owed it to himself, and to those who came after him, to speak out. The following morning, Carter briefed Marcus on the progress of the investigation. The encrypted files on the USB drive had been decrypted, revealing a treasure trove of incriminating evidence. Executives implicated in the scheme were identified, and warrants were being prepared for their arrests. Meanwhile, the fallout from the wrongful arrest continued to gain momentum, shining a spotlight on systemic racism within law enforcement. "We're getting close," Carter said, a note of triumph in her voice. "But we still need your help. Are you ready to testify?" Marcus took a deep breath, then nodded. "I'm ready." As he spoke those words, a sense of purpose washed over him. This wasn't just about clearing his name anymore. It was about exposing the truth, holding powerful people accountable, and standing up for those who couldn't stand up for themselves. Whatever challenges lay ahead, Marcus knew one thing for certain: he wouldn't back down. The days that followed were a blur of activity for Marcus. Under the protection of the FBI, he was relocated to a safe house, a modest apartment in a quiet neighborhood where no one would recognize him. The agents ensured his safety by installing surveillance cameras around the property and assigning a rotating team of guards to monitor the area 24/7. At first, Marcus found it hard to adjust to this new level of secrecy. He wasn't allowed to leave the premises without an escort, and even phone calls were monitored to prevent any leaks about his location. But as time passed, he began to settle into a routine, finding solace in the small comforts of his temporary home. Despite the restrictions, Marcus felt a growing sense of purpose. Every morning he met with Agent Carter and her team to go over the details of the case. They reviewed documents, rehearsed potential testimony, and discussed strategies for exposing the corruption within the company. Marcus learned more than he ever thought possible about corporate espionage, money laundering, and organized crime. It was overwhelming at times, but he refused to let himself be intimidated. Each piece of information brought him closer to the truth and closer to justice. 1. Afternoon. As Marcus sat in the living room of the safe house flipping through a stack of printed emails recovered from the USB drive, Agent Carter joined him. She carried 2 cups of coffee, handing one to Marcus before sitting down beside him. "How are you holding up?" she asked, her tone warm yet professional. Marcus took a sip of the coffee, savoring its bitterness before answering. "I'm okay. Still trying to wrap my head around all of this, though." Carter nodded sympathetically. "It's a lot to process. I know, but you're doing great. Your insights have been invaluable to the investigation." "Thanks," Marcus said with a small smile. I just want to make sure I don't mess anything up. These people, they're powerful. What if they find a way to wiggle out of this? They won't, Carter assured him firmly. We've built a strong case, and your testimony is going to be the nail in their coffin. Trust me, we've dealt with criminals like them before. They may think they're untouchable, but they're not. Her confidence bolstered Marcus's resolve. He realized that while he might feel small compared to the executives and corrupt officials they were targeting, his role was crucial. Without him, the evidence might never have come to light. For the first time in his life, Marcus felt truly seen, not as a janitor or a faceless employee, but as someone whose voice mattered. Outside the safe house, the public outcry over Marcus's wrongful arrest continued to grow. Protesters gathered daily outside the police station, demanding accountability for officers Daniels and Grayson. Local activists organized rallies, inviting speakers who shared stories of racial profiling and systemic injustice. Marcus's name became synonymous with resilience and courage, inspiring countless others to share their own experiences. Social media played a pivotal role in amplifying the movement. Hashtags like #Stand with Marcus and #Justice for All trended nationwide, drawing attention not only to his case, but also to broader issues of inequality within law enforcement. Celebrities and influencers used their platforms to spread awareness, urging their followers to sign petitions calling for reforms. Even national news outlets picked up the story, airing interviews with civil rights leaders and legal experts who condemned the officers' actions and called for systemic change. Amid the mounting pressure, the internal affairs investigation into Daniels and Grayson accelerated. Detectives uncovered a troubling pattern of misconduct dating back years. Both officers had been involved in numerous incidents where black individuals were targeted unfairly, often under flimsy pretexts. Their personnel files revealed multiple complaints filed against them, none of which had resulted in disciplinary action. This blatant disregard for accountability fueled further outrage, prompting calls for sweeping changes within the department. In response, the police chief announced a series of measures aimed at addressing systemic racism, including mandatory bias training for all officers, increased oversight of arrests, and the establishment of an independent review board to investigate complaints. While some praised these efforts as a step in the right direction, others argued they didn't go far enough. Activists demanded deeper reforms, such as reallocating funds to community programs and implementing stricter hiring standards to weed out problematic candidates. As weeks turned into months, the FBI's investigation reached a critical stage. The evidence on the USB drive, combined with financial records and witness testimonies, painted a damning picture of the executives involved in the illegal activities. Arrest warrants were issued for several high-ranking officials, including the CEO of the company. Raids were conducted simultaneously at their homes and offices, sending shockwaves through the business community. For Marcus, watching the arrests unfold on the news was surreal. He recognized some of the faces, people he'd passed in the hallways, during his cleaning rounds, individuals who had barely acknowledged his existence. Now they were being led away in handcuffs, their polished suits replaced with orange jumpsuits. It was a stark reminder that no one was above the law, no matter how much wealth or power they possessed. But the road ahead wasn't without challenges. As the trial date approached, Marcus faced intense scrutiny from both supporters and detractors. Some hailed him as a hero, praising his bravery and standing up to corruption. Others questioned his motives, suggesting he was seeking fame or financial gain. Online trolls targeted him relentlessly, leaving hateful comments on social media posts and spreading false rumors about his involvement in the case. Through it all, Marcus leaned on the support of Agent Carter and her team, as well as the growing network of allies he'd gained along the way. Civil rights organizations offered their assistance, providing resources and guidance to help him navigate the spotlight. Friends and co-workers from the office building rallied around him, organizing fundraisers to cover his legal expenses and ensure he wouldn't bear the financial burden alone. When the day of the trial finally arrived, Marcus stood nervously outside, the courthouse surrounded by reporters and supporters. Cameras flashed as he walked inside, flanked by Carter and a team of lawyers. The courtroom was packed, filled with spectators eager to witness the culmination of months of investigation and preparation. Executives sat stoically at the defense table, their expensive suits unable to mask the gravity of the charges against them. As Marcus took the stand, his heart pounded in his chest. He glanced at Carter, who gave him a subtle nod of encouragement. Taking a deep breath, he began recounting his story, from discovering the USB drive to enduring the wrongful arrest, and ultimately becoming a key figure in the investigation. His words were steady and clear, each sentence delivered with conviction. By the time he finished, there wasn't a dry eye in the room. The verdict came days later, guilty on all counts. Cheers erupted outside the courthouse as news of the convictions spread. For Marcus, it was a moment of vindication, not just for himself, but for everyone who had ever been wrongfully accused or treated unfairly because of their race. Justice had prevailed, and it was a victory worth celebrating. In the aftermath of the trial, Marcus emerged as a symbol of hope and resilience. Invitations poured in from community groups, schools, and advocacy organizations asking him to speak about his experience. Though hesitant at first, Marcus eventually agreed, realizing the impact his story could have on others. Standing on stages and addressing crowds, he spoke candidly about the challenges he'd faced and the lessons he'd learned. His message was simple yet powerful. No matter how small you feel, your voice matters. Together, we can create change. And so, Marcus embarked on a new chapter of his life, one defined not by fear or silence, but by courage and purpose. The trial's verdict was a turning point, not just for Marcus, but for the entire community. The guilty sentences handed down to the corrupt executives sent shockwaves through the city, proving that even those in positions of immense power could be held accountable. For Marcus, it marked the end of one chapter and the beginning of another. Though the ordeal had left scars, both visible and invisible, he refused to let bitterness define him. Instead, he chose to focus on the future, determined to use his experience as a catalyst for change. In the weeks following the trial, Marcus became an unexpected public figure. His story resonated deeply with people from all walks of life, inspiring conversations about systemic racism, corporate corruption, and the importance of standing up against injustice. Media outlets clamored for interviews, and invitations to speak at events poured in from across the country. At first, Marcus hesitated. He wasn't used to being in the spotlight, and the attention made him uncomfortable. But after some encouragement from Agent Carter and his growing circle of supporters, he decided to embrace the opportunity. If sharing his story could help others find their own courage, then it was worth stepping out of his comfort zone. His first speaking engagement was at a local high school auditorium. The event was organized by a youth advocacy group that focused on empowering marginalized communities. When Marcus walked onto the stage, he was greeted by thunderous applause. Looking out at the sea of young faces, many of whom reminded him of his younger self, he felt a lump rise in his throat. He began by recounting his journey, from the quiet mornings spent cleaning offices to the harrowing day of his wrongful arrest and everything that followed. But more than just recounting facts, Marcus shared the emotions behind them, the fear, the anger, the frustration, and ultimately, the hope. "I didn't choose this path," he told the audience, his voice steady but filled with emotion. "It chose me. And while I wouldn't wish what happened to me on anyone, I can say this. It taught me something important. It taught me that no matter how small you feel, your actions matter. Your voice matters. Even when people try to silence you, even when they make you doubt yourself, you have power. You always have power." By the time he finished speaking, there wasn't a dry eye in the room. Students lined up afterward to thank him, some sharing their own stories of discrimination or hardship. One teenager approached him shyly, clutching a notebook. "Mr. Johnson," she said, her voice trembling, "you're my hero. Because of you, I know I can fight back too." Marcus smiled, placing a hand on her shoulder. "You don't need heroes," he replied gently. "You just need to believe in yourself." As word of his speeches spread, Marcus found himself traveling to different cities, addressing larger crowds at conferences, rallies, and town halls. Each speech brought new connections and opportunities. Civil rights organizations invited him to collaborate on initiatives aimed at combating racial profiling and promoting equality. Lawmakers consulted him when drafting legislation designed to increase transparency and accountability within law enforcement. What started as a personal quest for justice evolved into a broader movement, one that Marcus never imagined he'd play such a central role in. Despite the growing recognition, Marcus remained grounded. He continued working part-time as a janitor, finding peace in the familiarity of mopping floors and emptying trash bins. To him, it was a reminder of where he came from and a testament to the idea that dignity isn't tied to job titles or social status. His co-workers, who had always admired his work ethic, now looked at him with even greater respect. "Marcus is proof that anyone can make a difference," one of them said during a staff meeting. "He's still the same guy we've always known. He's just showing the world what we've seen all along." Meanwhile, the fallout from the trial extended far beyond the courtroom. Officers Daniels and Grayson faced criminal charges for their roles in Marcus's wrongful arrest. Their trial revealed a long history of misconduct, exposing deep-seated issues within the police department. Public pressure mounted, leading to widespread reforms. The city implemented stricter protocols for handling anonymous tips, mandated body cameras for all officers, and established civilian oversight committees to review cases of alleged misconduct. While critics argued that these changes were overdue, many saw them as a step toward rebuilding trust between law enforcement and the communities they served. For Marcus, seeing the ripple effects of his testimony was both humbling and gratifying. He often reflected on how drastically his life had changed. Once an ordinary man simply trying to get by, he had become a symbol of resilience and determination. Yet, he never lost sight of the fact that he was still just Marcus, the same person who loved listening to jazz music on quiet evenings, who cherished Sunday dinners with his family, and who believed in the goodness of people despite everything he'd been through. One evening, months after the trial concluded, Marcus stood on a stage at a large outdoor rally. Thousands of people had gathered, holding signs and chanting slogans calling for justice and reform. The energy in the air was electric, a mix of anger, hope, and unity. As Marcus took the microphone, the crowd fell silent, hanging on his every word. "When I was arrested that morning," he began, pausing to let the gravity of the moment sink in, "I thought my life was over. I thought no one would listen, but you did. All of you listened, and because of that, we've accomplished something incredible. We've shown that when we stand together, we can challenge even the most powerful forces." He paused again, scanning the sea of faces before continuing. "This fight isn't over. There's still so much work to be done. But if we keep pushing forward, if we refuse to stay silent, we can create a world where everyone is treated with fairness and respect. A world where no one has to endure what I went through." The crowd erupted into cheers, their voices echoing into the night sky. Marcus stepped back from the podium, overcome with emotion. As fireworks lit up the horizon, symbolizing celebration and renewal, he felt a profound sense of gratitude. Not just for the support he'd received, but for the knowledge that his story had sparked something bigger, a movement rooted in hope, courage, and collective action. In the years that followed, Marcus dedicated himself to advocacy work. He co-founded an organization aimed at supporting victims of racial profiling and wrongful arrests, providing them with legal resources and counseling. He also pursued further education, enrolling in night classes to earn a degree in social work. His dream was to become a counselor, helping others navigate trauma and find strength in adversity. Though the road ahead was long, Marcus faced it with unwavering optimism. He knew that true change wouldn't happen overnight, but he also knew that every small victory counted, whether it was mentoring a young student, testifying before lawmakers, or simply offering a kind word to someone in need. Marcus understood the value of persistence. And so, as he looked back on everything he'd endured and achieved, Marcus couldn't help but smile. Life had thrown him curveballs, but he had caught them and turned them into something extraordinary. From the quiet hallways of an office building to the national stage, Marcus Johnson had proven that even the smallest voice could ignite the loudest revolution.